21-year-old Alisha Bromfield was a student at Western Illinois University, only a few months away from earning her degree in forensic psychology. She lived in Plainfield, Illinois. Alisha was preparing to become a single mother. The father of her child, whom she had met in college, did not want to be involved in the child's upbringing. She was 6.5 months pregnant with a baby girl she planned to name Ava Lucille. Alisha was incredibly excited and truly looked forward to becoming a mother. Unfortunately, she would never get that chance. For 5 years, Alisha had been working for a garden center, a business specializing in plants and landscaping, within a Home Depot, a large retail store. Her supervisor was 36-year-old Brian Cooper. Alisha constantly told her friends and family about how poorly Brian treated her at work. He called her offensive names, frequently threw things at her, forced her to work long hours, and would not even let her go to the doctor. However, Alisha liked the job because it paid well. It was also seasonal, meaning she had a paid winter break, so she held onto the position. She eventually became a regional manager. Brian used his managerial position to exert power and intimidate Alisha so he could spend as much time as possible near her. She even walked his dog and occasionally helped him around the house. Alisha reported Brian's abuse to upper management, but they ignored it. Brian told all their colleagues that Alisha was his girlfriend, but in reality, Alisha had rejected his advances many times, and they were not even friends. In August of 2012, Brian's sister was getting married, and he did not want to go alone. He forced Alisha to go with him, even threatening to fire her if she did not accompany him as his girlfriend. Alisha was afraid of losing her job, so she had to agree. Alisha's mother, Sherry, knew about Brian's constant harassment and humiliation of her daughter and begged her not to go to the wedding. However, Alisha said she had no choice. She mentioned that she had warned Brian they would go only as friends and nothing more. Returning home the following morning, Alisha also told her mother that the wedding party would be held at the Grand Beach Resort in Door County, Wisconsin. Since there would be many people there, she felt safe. On the early morning of August 18th, 2012, Brian and Alisha left for the resort, which was about a 4-hour drive from her home in Plainfield. Brian had booked a room for them for one night. Shortly after arriving, Alisha texted her mother saying she and Brian had argued and would be coming home soon. She said the wedding party was not at the hotel Brian had expected. However, a few hours later, Alisha texted her mother again saying they had decided to stay. Brian had been making advances toward Alisha, which caused a conflict between them, but Brian promised it would not happen again and asked her to stay for the wedding. He was supposed to escort his sister, the bride, and did not want to let her down. Alisha agreed. During the wedding, Brian was angry because Alisha kept her distance from him, and everyone noticed. He had wanted to impress everyone with the image that he had a girlfriend and that they were happy. It was then that he had his first thoughts of harming Alisha. When they returned to the hotel, it was late, and Alisha was very sleepy and tired. Brian had been drinking. She took a shower and went to bed. Brian then asked her if she would go to the movies with him the following Sunday evening. Alisha refused and reminded him of their agreement, that there would be no relationship between them after the wedding. He flew into a rage, realizing they would never be together. She had hurt him, and he wanted to cause her pain in return. He lunged at Alisha as she lay on the bed, sat on top of her, and began to strangle her. Alisha begged him not to do it and to think of her baby, but Brian did not want to think about that. He dragged Alisha from the bed to the floor and continued to strangle her until she was dead. Afterward, he undressed and raped Alisha, claiming he just wanted to see her naked. But that was a lie. Brian had already seen Alisha naked, though she never knew it. He had hidden a camera in the bathroom and toilet of his home every time she came over to record her, later watching her in a perverted manner. He was simply obsessed with her. He had even placed a camera in a trash can in the hotel bathroom and filmed Alisha coming out of the shower naked. All these video recordings were discovered after Brian contacted the police. After killing Alisha, Brian carefully covered her body with a blanket and placed a pillow under her head. He attempted to take his own life but could not. He then fell asleep in the bathroom. The next morning, Brian tried to drown himself in the bay, but he could not go through with it. He decided to drive to a nearby gas station. Still in wet clothes, Brian entered the gas station convenience store and asked the clerk to call 911. He told the dispatcher he wanted to report the murder of 21-year-old Alisha Bromfield. 911 dispatcher: "Do you know for sure a murder has occurred?" Brian Cooper: "Yes." 911 dispatcher: "Do you know who killed her?" Brian Cooper: "Yes." 911 dispatcher: "Okay, was this an accident, or were you angry, or—" Brian Cooper: "It was intentional." A few minutes later, police officers arrived at the gas station where Brian was and detained him. During the interrogation, Brian chillingly laid out all the details of the murder. Brian told investigators that he and Alisha saw each other more like friends, but he wanted more. He said he respected her refusal because she was pregnant by another man, but when she said she wanted nothing more to do with him, he became enraged. When asked if Alisha resisted, Brian replied, "She fought back, and then she screamed about the baby and said, 'Don't do this to me because of the baby.' And she bit my finger, and then we rolled off the bed and I strangled her." The police asked if he had shown aggression toward other girls before, and he admitted that he had tied up his ex-girlfriend when he couldn't reach her by phone and just wanted to talk. Unfortunately, that woman had not gone to the police and Brian was never arrested. While Brian was at the station, police arrived at the hotel and found Alicia's body. She was lying on the floor, her head on a pillow. She was naked, covered by a blanket, and there were bruises and scratches on her body. Following his detailed confession, Brian Cooper was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide for Alisha and her baby, and third-degree sexual assault. For the prosecution, it seemed like an open and shut case. They had not only Brian's confession, but also his DNA at the crime scene. However, at the trial, Brian decided to plead not guilty, which came as a shock to everyone. Not only had he killed Alisha and her unborn child, but by pleading not guilty, he forced her family to sit in the courtroom and endure the incredibly intimate details of how they were murdered. Brian's defense was based on voluntary intoxication. He claimed he was too drunk to realize the gravity of his actions on that fatal night. Despite the fact that Brian was able to recount every detail of the murder, 2 out of the 12 jurors, who incidentally were women, believed his defense and voted not guilty. Alicia's family and friends were devastated. Brian had admitted to the murder multiple times to the police, even stating it was intentional and planned. Furthermore, he remembered every detail, describing it step by step. If he had been so drunk that he didn't realize what he was doing, he simply wouldn't have been able to recall all those details. But this was not the end. Alicia's mother decided she would not let what happened to her daughter happen to another innocent victim because of Brian. Along with Alicia's friends, they began lobbying to remove voluntary intoxication from the list of legally acceptable defenses. Thanks to their joint efforts, voluntary intoxication was eliminated as a defense in Wisconsin, as it already had been in 31 other states. This was a massive victory. Unfortunately, Brian was still able to use voluntary intoxication as a defense during his second trial a year later, as it had been the law at the time of the crime. But this time, the jury did not believe him. Within an hour, the jury deliberated and unanimously found Brian guilty on 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide of Alisha Bromfield and her unborn child. On July 24th, 2014, Brian was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. Afterwards, Sherry filed a civil lawsuit against Alicia's employer for failing to respond to the complaints of abuse Alisha had sent them, which they ignored. She believes they should also be held accountable for failing to protect their employee. As a result of this case, it was revealed that several other women had been harassed by Brian at work and had also written complaints about him to upper management. Management had even sent him to anger management classes, but he didn't attend, and management never followed up. There was another young woman, Jessica, with whom he was literally obsessed. He harassed her constantly, even rubbing against her, and she eventually quit because she couldn't take it anymore. That was when he shifted his attention to Alisha. At the time, she was still just a teenager and did not have the strength to fight back, so she endured all his attacks. He controlled her all the time and wouldn't even let her go to lunch if he knew other men would be there. He demanded she go on business trips and stay in the same room with him. The company denies any guilt in this crime, claiming they could not have foreseen any of this. This legal process is still ongoing. Let's discuss. Do you think this tragedy could really have been avoided if Alicia's employers hadn't ignored her complaints and had intervened with Brian? If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. Thank you all for watching.